Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are having a good day so far, and I hope that your day is blessed. Um, Today, I wanted to do a devotional that has been going in my heart and my mind for the last few weeks. Just different circumstances, um, different things that I've heard has just kind of put this all together. It's actually an accumulation of several things together. I don't have any per se notes. I have some things, some notes from different things, but outside of that, I have nothing that compiles everything together. So I hope this turns out well. But just kind of wanted to name the title of this uh, during the what ifs and the whys. During the what ifs and the whys. I think one of the things that as Christians we struggle with probably the most of anything, as well as people who don't believe in God or no longer serve God, one of the biggest things is why does bad things happen to good people? And I think we all struggle with this. I think that's part of humanity is something that we struggle with is to understand what happened or why good things happen to bad people. And it's something that we, in our human finite mind, we just don't understand that. And I'm going through another denomination. They have I saw where they were having an anxiety support group for several weeks, for a couple months, and I asked if I could join in on their anxiety support group. It's a small group that they're having online for a few weeks, a couple months, and I wanted to be a part of it. A lot of things have happened this year, and of course my anxiety has been high at different times, super high at other times during this year. And I just felt like it would really help me to cope, to kind of give me some guidance. I do get assistant counseling assistance for the situation as well. But I really thought that this group, when I saw that I really wanted to be a part of it and just allow God to speak into my life during that time period. And they're going through a really good anxiety book that I did not have in front of me, so I can't give you the name of it. I'll be honest, I have not started the book. Life is crazy right now, so I've been going through the online groups and to those meetings, but unfortunately, I have not read the book yet. But hope to read the book because there's a lot of good information in it. But one of the things it goes through our group is discussion about fear and worry and anxiety and panic and the different responses that we have, and it all comes back to what our Christian response should be. And I've really enjoyed this, and one of the things that they had mentioned is that anxiety never goes away, and we're always going to have anxiety. It's just how do we deal with the anxiety. It's a free little tidbit I brought you. It doesn't really have much to do with what I was talking about, but that probably is one of the things that really stuck out in my mind, that accepting that, because so many times we think we're flawed when we have anxiety over situations or things that happen, or we worry about situations that happen, and we're human. We're going to worry. I mean, those are our family members. Those are our children. It's our parents. It's our job, whatever the situation is. So we're going to worry. We're going to have those thoughts. So how do we have, and I wish I could find in my notes where it said that we just got to learn our Christian response. I don't know where it's at right now in my notes, but we've got to learn how to have the Christian response during that time period. And I really like that thought. But anyway, one of the discussions that we have is dealing with our what ifs, because so many of our anxieties and worries comes from what ifs. So we all have the what ifs. I think that that's just part of us being human, and but it also drives anxiety and worry within us. What if something was to happen in this, and what if this was to happen, or what if it can be a million things. What happens if my job goes wrong? What if my kids no longer want to serve God? What if uh, we become estranged from parents or children? Or, I mean, just what if COVID hits our home and takes a loved one? What if, and the list can go on and on. What if we get cancer and can't provide for our family? And the list could go on and on forever. And in our group last week, we had to write down our what ifs, and then we talked about it. And so I took it a step further because yes, we all have those what ifs, and most of our what ifs, even though probably founded with some bit of truth in it or some bit of reality in it, most of our what ifs will never happen. Our mind can conjure up a million different what ifs. Most of them will never happen. I mean, yeah, we're human in reality, in real life, yes, it could happen, but the chances of those what ifs happening are extremely slim. But I wanted to take my thoughts a little further than that, because with the things that happened in my life, if you had asked me last year, that would have been the end of my thoughts and my discussions. Okay, I rationalized on most of my what ifs will never happen. And of course, that's what happens when we get anxiety, and we try to rationalize out our anxiety to try to figure out what's wrong. We'll talk about in counseling or wherever, we'll say, okay, we go through, well, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about if this happens, all those what ifs. But in reality, they'll never happen. They're like dreams. Dreams are dreams. In reality, they're not. Although founded on something, chances are they will never happen. But what I wanted to talk about today is what happens when those what ifs really do happen. What if our reality, the what if becomes a reality in our life? I know a lot of my discussions lately have been around what happened with my parents this year. Hugely impacted my life forever. When my best friend and prayer partner got killed in a car accident when a high-speed car chase went bad years ago, and it ruined my wedding in a lot of ways because I was trying to grieve at the same time my friend was buried, and my friends had to choose between the two. I've since been healed from from the hurts and the pains of that. But because of that situation, and then with my brother-in-law's mother dying instantly in a car accident, one of my fears has, through the years, have always been, what if my family is in a horrible, horrific accident? What if my parents, my husband, my kids, what if somebody were to be involved in a severe accident and they're killed? That's been one of my things. Now, of course, like I said, since then I've been healed from the fears and the anxiety of that. So when I was healed from that, New Year's Eve, when was it, 2 years ago or whenever, I was healed from that, and that was no longer a fear or worry of mine. But I had no idea that in January of this year, I was going to get that phone call, and my what if, my worst nightmare, came true. And I was faced with my what if happening right there in front of me, and right there, and I'm forced in the midst of this. I don't know if my parents are going to live. I don't know how severe. At first, didn't even know the severity of their condition. I didn't know what their condition would be afterwards. I didn't know if they would live, if they would die. I didn't know if they lived, what their condition would be. And my what if happened. So when the anxiety group, when we were talking about it, I took it a step further, not just what are my what ifs, but what happens when my what ifs actually do happen? What happens during the what ifs? how do I handle that? Because that's where I'm at right now. That's where I've struggled this year. It's like how, and that's when in the counseling sessions and stuff that I've had, trying to deal with all of this is how do I deal with this? What if that actually happened? How do I deal with what has actually occurred? And um, thankfully, my parents both lived. Thankfully, they're okay in that sense. But there's repercussions from that. Dad never did recover from the car accident when he fell. I mean, he had frailty in his body before the accident ever occurred, and he didn't use his walker. So he when he fell and broke his hip, and he had never healed from it emotionally or physically, it took him down. And because of that, he's now living in a nursing home. And my mom is only able to do a fraction of what she was able to do, the strength that she had so much of before. A lot of that is now gone. And we've had a lot of life changes with that because now dad's living in a nursing home. And mom's struggling with, now living on her own for the first time in all these years, and still trying to take care of dad and his needs. And it's like, how do we, and then me trying to learn how to navigate it first, just trying to take care of their needs and trying to get them well and trying to get them through the worst of it physically. And then now just trying to navigate this new world that we're in and trying to help my parents navigate it, and feeling the weight of the world of that on my shoulders. But my what if happened. And that's the reality of where I'm at. Now that my what if happened, how do I deal with that? How do I navigate this? How do I go through with this, and I look at, and I know I'm not the only one who's gone through that, so, kind of wanted, and I know we all have our what ifs and our circumstances, and there's going to be quite a few of you all who are living your what if. You're in that phase where I'm at now of what happens during this what if time period. And the whys, you ask why. For me, I ask God, why did you allow the accident to happen? What's the purpose in them living, and what's the purpose that you have for them, and the plan that you have for them, and the purpose and my role and where I'm to be right now, and how I'm supposed to move forward in this. And God, why could have had it happen at a different time when they were younger, or in a few years when my kids are grown and I'm not in school anymore, and I have more time to help devote to their recovery, and not feel so pulled between my house and their house, and in two different states, and school and teenagers, and just and then my husband's father having terminal cancer, and we knew he was going to pass, and we didn't know when, so we had that extra, and that was in another state, and we're just pulled in all these directions, and just trying to figure it out. And like I said, I know I'm not the only one who's done it, and I know that you all are either in your what if stage or phase of life, or maybe your what if, like me, happened and you're living in that, or maybe you're already past that, maybe you've moved past that and you can look back and see where God's brought you from, and how he's helped you through it. But I look at other situations that's happened. Like I said, it happened to me. It happened to my parents. Their what if happened, and then I look back at my friend whose memorial service was last week. She was only in her 30s and passed away from COVID, leaving a newborn infant, an 18-month-old and a 14-year-old. I mean, you can't help but ask God why, and the father who is the missionary, in Costa Rica, is her dad. And last year, his wife got COVID and came very, very close to death. I mean, there's quite a few times when they didn't think she was going to live. And I think there's a couple times maybe they even called in the family members saying she wasn't going to live. And here he is serving God, doing, they were in United States deputized and raising money to go back to Costa Rica and then she was struck with COVID and almost died. And then while they're still here in the United States and still trying to finish their deposition so they can go back, um, his daughter gets COVID and dies, leaving these three young kids. And you know, he never thought about his daughter actually dying, you know. But I'm sure that, you know, he was like, what if my wife passes away from COVID? How does that change my ministry? How does that change what happens? But then when his wife lived, you know, what if my kids get COVID? You know, both of his kids have kids. You know, right now between the two families, his two kids, one that passed and the other one, there's now 6 boys under 6 years of age and a 14-year-old and another 14-year-old. So, I mean, you know, I'm sure that he thought, what if one of my kids get COVID and they pass, leaving all these kids behind? And it's, you know, I'm sure the what ifs went through his mind. But then his what if became a reality. You know, his what if happened. And now he's in that phase of him and his son and their family and stuff are now living out the reality of their what if happened, and she passed away, leaving these kids. And you know, and thank God that they're going to be very well taken care of, and they don't know how it's going to work. You know, going back to the mission field, you know, does he take some kids with him? Do they, you know, does he no longer do the stay as missionary, and his responsibility is now to live out his days? You know, he wanted to live there as a missionary until he died, you know, and does this change that situation for him? You know, his whole world is turned upside down, you know, just like my mom's whole world's turned upside down. And in many ways, mine's turned upside down because now I have the responsibility of the care of my parents on top of my own kids and my own family. And then, you know, just reading in the news recently about a young girl in her 20s who her what if happened, or if not hers, if she wasn't thinking that, definitely her parents' worst nightmare of what if, you know, something happens to my daughter. And I don't want to go into any of the details or anything, but, you know, I mean, the daughter's no longer alive due to, you know, a situation with another guy. And, you know, this mama is now living her what if that came true. You know, and I'm sure at some point she had some thoughts and some feelings that, you know, red flags and stuff, and some what ifs. But that what if became a reality, and she's now living her what if. She's in the middle of, how do I navigate this? How do I now live without my daughter? You know, and the missionary, you know, how do I live without my daughter? How do I navigate this with young kids that need to be taken care of? A newborn baby, you know? I mean, to be past retirement age, and now you're in charge of a newborn baby, an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old, you know? I mean, as well as with the other family, you know, trying to put their resources together to two sets of families to try to figure out how to navigate this world. Sometimes the what if happens, and then you question why. God, why did this happen? Why couldn't we see ahead of time? Why couldn't you have changed that? Why did it have to be this person or that person, or you know? And I know my mom struggled with it. We've had conversations. She goes, why did it happen to us? Why did, you know, we've gone to church our whole life, we've served God, you know, I'm always doing for other people, I'm always there for other people, and I give money, I give them my time, resources. She's always been very strong and helped people with anything and building things and doing a lot of things. And she's like, why me? Why did it happen to us, you know? And we have to, as Christians, we struggle with that. How do we navigate the what ifs and the whys? And when it happens, how do we navigate that? How do we figure out in our mind, rationalize it out? And we struggle with that. And at my friend's memorial service, the preacher who spoke, he said something that really stuck out to me. And I went to him afterwards and told him how much this meant to me and how didn't go into detail. I'm sure he doesn't, although he knows our family and stuff. I seriously doubt that he's followed my story and know what's gone on with my parents. But I shared with him that what he said meant so much to me, and I know it probably meant to other people too. But I wanted to bring that out. Speaking of during the what ifs and during the whys, and trying to navigate that time period in your life. Uh, this is what he said. And of course, he was at the memorial service for my 35-year-old friend who passed away. And the questions are just surrounding of why she died from COVID at such a young age, leaving the kids and on and so forth. But the sentence that he said that really stood out to me is he said, sometimes you can't wrap your mind around the situation, around it, but you can wrap your faith around it. And I want to say that again. It's sometimes you can't wrap your mind around it, but you can wrap your faith around it. And that really stood out to me. And I'm going to say it one more time because it means so much. Sometimes you can't wrap your mind around it, but you can wrap your faith around it. And originally, when he said that, I was originally going to make my conversation and that be my topic. When you can't wrap your mind around it, that was going to be my original topic. And but it's so true because there's so many things in life, and I know with COVID and all the craziness with it, and just a lot of things that's happened in life just recently and stuff outside of just my situation, and just looking at that, sometimes we can't wrap our mind around things that happen. What happens or why does bad things happen to good people? Those are situations we can't wrap our mind around. I mean, I'm following two different stories. I love human interest stories. They just they just really interest me. And I'm actually following, there's several stories. I have one where it's a Pentecostal couple who had just gotten married, a week or two or something like that. And their house exploded. This was 2-3 years ago. House exploded and they were severely burned. She was more severely burned than him. And she was definitely left disfigured. Members of her fingers and stuff is gone. And she's had to live with her what ifs happening and why did this happen to me? Why am I injured? Why did this happen to us? Serving God, beautiful, beautiful couple, and just serving God. And a lot of friends I know this couple personally, and just why did that happen to such a good people? And I'm following another story of two different situations of conjoined twins. One of them my sister knows. Another one is another story I'm following. Two different circumstances here in the United States, and one of them is a pastor and his wife from a different denomination who, in Alabama, who has conjoined twins. Fortunately, they're going to be able to be separated, and all should go well. It's been now, I think, 5 or 6 months, and they're getting ready to be separated in the next few months. But they've had to move away from Alabama, move away from their church, move away from their family, and they've had to move to a different state and get a different home and stuff, and try to figure out how to navigate this world of having several kids that they're trying to take care of, plus these conjoined twins in the hospital that are requiring a lot of their time and attention, and trying to navigate a year plus more of being away from their church and away from their income and away from everything in order to help take care of the conjoined twins. And then there's the one that my sister knows, and they've got conjoined twins, about a month old, and they're not going to make it. They already know. They were born, they had to be taken early. They've got heart issues. They're not going to make it. They took the preemies home, only being like 2 pounds or something, because they wanted to be home with them. I mean, miraculously, they've lived a month, and they were hoping for a miracle to somehow be able to separate them. And unfortunately, it can't happen. And unfortunately, the outcome is that they are going to pass. And why does these things happen? I mean, it seems to be a good family, an upstanding person. Why does this stuff happen? And and you can understand when bad things happen to bad people. I mean, that's something in our human mind we can understand. That's the way it's supposed to be. Bad things are supposed to happen to bad people, but bad things happen to good people as well. And I've had to tell my mom that it rains on the just and the unjust. And then when my mom has cried and to me and questioned, I don't understand why this has happened to us. And the only comment I could say is that the Bible clearly states it rains on the just and the unjust equally. We're, as Christians, just because we live for God, we're not exempt from cancer. We're not exempt from kids going astray. We're not exempt from bad things happening to us, and being involved in car accidents and just so many other things I could think about that happened in reality. And the couple who was severely burned, and living every day with being really disfigured and just and having to cope in a world where she's burnt and she's missing digits and just different things. And sometimes we can't wrap our mind around what happens, but we can wrap our faith around it. And that's what I love reading about the couple that was severely burned and stuff. And the lady struggles with a lot of anxiety and struggles with a lot of situations, and she's still struggling. Even spiritually, it's hard for her to wrap her mind about what happened and how it changed their lives forever. And they didn't even get to start their marriage. This happened to them, and it changed the dynamics of their marriage. Unfortunately, it's working out for them, and with God's help, they're making it. But it's hard to wrap your mind around those things. And I think I'm still struggling. I mean, that's one of the things that I talk about with the counselor that I'm going through right now, is that I'm still trying to wrap my mind around what happened to my parents and the major changes in our family's lives right now. It's just, and then I'm the one who carries the bulk of the load of it. And even though my mom makes the decisions, I'm there to, it's my responsibility to make sure right decisions are made, and trying to help my mom make those decisions, those right decisions, and decisions that we can live with. And it's hard to wrap your mind around this. I mean, I can't wrap my mind around my parents rolling down a hill 5+ times. I can't, and being trapped, I can't wrap my mind around it. It's hard for me to even think about without just tearing apart. I can't wrap my mind around it. I can't wrap my mind around those first few weeks afterwards and all that my parents went through. I can't wrap my mind around it. It's hard for me. Even now, it's hard. I struggle with wrapping my mind around it. But one thing has stood this whole entire year, but I can wrap my faith around it. And I'm telling you, I don't know what I would have done this year if it wasn't for my faith in God. Fortunately, my spiritual life has grown so much this year. Even though emotionally I've struggled in certain areas, my faith is so strong in God. My faith has never been this strong in God. I've never had this much faith and trust in God, but I do. This has just brought me so much closer, because, and I remember when I went to Guatemala on our first missions trip, the comment that one of the missionaries had said to me that stood out. She says, these people don't have anything, but when you give them Jesus, they have everything. And that has always stood out in my mind. And, this year, even though physically I haven't lost anything, but this year, we've lost so much. Family dynamics will never be the same. things will never be the same. I don't know if my dad will ever be able to come to my house, that I'll be able to watch him here, and for us to sit out on the back deck that he loves so much, and for him to be able to come home, and hopefully for holidays and stuff, but just, he won't ever be able to live at home again, and unless God does a miraculous work in his life. Things have changed, but one thing that does not change, one constant, is my faith in God. And to see my dad be able to worship and pray, and I know it drives the nursing home crazy, because all he does is watches sermons, all day long. And I'm sure it drives him crazy, and he's known as the really religious man, and but his faith is strong. His faith is secure. And he's told me several times, he goes, well, Amanda, if I were to go tonight, he said, tell my friends I'm ready. Tell my friends I'm ready. Tell my friends I've been with Jesus, and I'm going to go to be with Jesus. And even though my heart's like, no, Dad, don't say that. I don't want you to go tonight. I want you to stay around a while longer. The fact is, his faith is strong. When we go through bad things, when the what ifs happen, when we have to struggle with the whys, one thing, we may not be able to wrap our mind around it, but we can wrap our faith around it. And one of the things in that my anxiety group, when they talked about trust in God, and I wanted to bring this about, trust, T-R-U-S-T. T can stand for trust God at his word, or take God at his word, take God at his word. So when we're trusting God, we are taking God at his word. We are saying that his word is truth. And there's scriptures with this, and for the second time, I'm not going to read it. But the R in trust means rest in his presence. Rest in his presence. And with that, I'm going to read this scripture. It says, all things are, at least part of the scripture, all things work for the good to them that love the Lord. We know that all things are going to work out for the good because we serve God. So we can rest in his presence. We have to, the U stands for understand that the outcome does not depend on us. And let me tell you, through this whole process, anybody that knows me loves that I'm a go-getter. They know that I'm a go-getter. I'm going to go after it. I'm going to make it happen no matter what. And with my parents' accident and stuff, trust me, if there's anything I can do to help make their life better, if there was anything I could do to make them survive, I wanted to be able to do it. I wanted to be able to get in there and just I wanted that outcome to be something I could control. But there was one thing that I realized very quickly, is that I couldn't control the outcome. The outcome is God's. Whether they lived, whether they died, it was up to God. And I remember with the missionary, when his daughter was over the last month, when his daughter was struggling to live and she was trying to fight for it. The missionary kept saying that the outcome's God. It's up to God what he chooses. He wanted his daughter to live. He wanted his daughter to pull through. But the outcome is God. And I have another preacher friend, older preacher friend around my parents' age, and he's over 100 something days into COVID, maybe 110, 120 days and dealing with COVID. And at one point, I really thought that he wasn't going to pull through. And I think the family was even called in. But he's pulled through. Why does one young, lady with young kids, why does she pass? And then the other one looks like, he's living, and he's older gentleman and he's living, how we don't get to choose that outcome. To me, it would seem, you would think that, okay, if it's somebody who's lived their life like my parents, maybe it is better to take them and let the younger live. The outcome is not up to us. God has a reason and God has a purpose. So the T is take God at his word. R is rest in his presence. U is understand that the outcome does not depend on us. S is for accepting God's sovereignty. And God's sovereignty. And that is that he is the supreme power of authority. And I struggled with this in our class that we had in our group, is because when it came to discuss about the sovereignty of God, I've heard it, I know it, I've been to Bible college, we've studied, but when you have to apply it to your own life, when you have to accept that God is the supreme power of authority, God has the final say. And part of trusting God is accepting that he is that supreme power, that he is he has the final say in that. And the T is turn to past testimonies. Turn to past testimonies. And let me tell you, during the time when I was dealing with my parents, I kept saying, God, you've done it before, you'll do it again. And just as one miracle happened, then I would say, okay, God, you handle this one miracle, you'll do it again. And I just lived off of that, from one miracle to another miracle to another miracle, from one testimony to another. And part of my trust in God, when this first happened with my parents, and even now, it's, God, I've seen you do it then, I'm going to see you do it now. I'm going to trust I'm going to take those testimonies, and I'm going to trust that if you did it before, you're going to do it again. So let me go over trust again before I sign off of here. Trust is take God at his word. Trust is resting in his presence. Trust is understanding that the outcome does not depend on us. Trust is accepting the sovereignty of God, that he has all the supreme power and authority. And trust is turning to past testimonies, our own testimonies and others, knowing that we can trust God for the outcome. And so when our what ifs happen, we can, during our what ifs, during our whys, when we're living that out, we can trust God. We can take him at his word. We can wrap our faith around it. Even though we can't wrap our mind around the circumstance, we can wrap our mind, or we can wrap our faith around it, and trusting God, taking him at his word, trusting that he is all powerful, he is all knowing, and he has the outcome in his hands. That takes the worry out of it. That takes the anxiety out of it. This anxiety group was just so worth it. I could keep going to counseling, and I could go to counseling after counseling, and I'm not knocking it, and I'm still going to go to counseling for this and get the help that I need. But there is nothing like when you can't wrap your mind around it. You can put your faith, you can wrap your faith around that circumstance and trust God for the outcome. Trust that he is working all things for the good. He is working all things for the good. And if I had the time, I would read some scriptures with it. But take God at his word. Take him at his word. Wrap your faith around it. So whatever your circumstance is, whether you're living in the place of what ifs, of just, if you're at that phase where nothing's happened yet, but you do have that anxiety, you do have that worry about what if this and what if that, or whether you're at the place where I'm at and the missionaries at and several others are at, where you're living out your what if, and you're questioning God, why this, why, when the conjoined twins, why did you give me conjoined twins that we know are going to die? Why am I having to move away? In the other case, why are we having to move thousands of miles away from our church and where our income is, and being able to minister to them, and we're having to live out this, and live it out for a year plus more, with our young kids, and divided of just, here's my home, but here's where we have to be, during those times when we don't understand our circumstance, we don't understand why the bad thing happened, why the circumstance happened. When we can't wrap our mind around that, we can at least wrap our faith in God around our circumstance. So, and I'm a very visual person. I've said it before. So, and I just have this image of when I can't wrap my mind, like the circumstances in the middle, and I can't wrap my mind around that circumstance to figure it out in my finite mind. And when I can't wrap my mind around that circumstance, I can wrap my faith around that circumstance. Yes, my circumstance is right here in the middle. It's right there. I can't change the situation. It happened. It happened. I can't change that circumstance. I can't wrap my mind around that, but my faith in God is around that. And when your circumstance is wrapped around your faith in God, there is nothing that you can go through that God's not there. There is nothing that you go through that you can't make it, because God is there with you. God is so there with you during the midst of it. Your situation's here. Your situation's not changing. And maybe you can't wrap your mind around it, but your faith in God is there. And let your faith in God continue to grow, not just right here, but outside of it. Your faith will continue to be wrapped around that. Your trust in God is wrapped around that circumstance, so that that circumstance is small compared to your faith in God. Your circumstance is small compared to your trust in God that's wrapped all the way around it. I am just so encouraged right now. And like I said, this situation this year, the situation I've gone through has only made my faith in God so much stronger. My faith has always been weak in God. That is the area in which spiritually I was weak in. It was like, God, I believe, but help my unbelief. But this year has changed that. God, I believe. God, I know that you are able. I can wrap my mind around my circumstance. And I don't know what my future holds. I hope none of my other what ifs ever happen. I really hope and pray that they never happen. And we all know that we have more what ifs. But God, even if another what if happens, I can wrap my faith around it, even though I cannot wrap my mind around it. I can wrap my faith around it. And when I think back of the circumstance when my best friend died in that car accident at the time of my wedding, and my circumstance was right here, and I'm like, for years I struggled. God, I don't understand, why did it happen? And when God healed me of that situation, and he healed my emotions from that situation, it went from not being able to surround my mind around all those, God, I don't understand why, I don't understand why, I don't understand why, to God, I trust you. God, I have faith in you. God, I believe in you. And this year has been that way. My prayers have been so strong this year. God, I believe in you. And when I go to the altar now and I just cry out to God, and my prayer is, God, I believe in you. God, I trust you. God, I believe that you are all powerful. You are sovereign. You have all the answers. And God, I trust you with my life. I trust you with my circumstances. And for years I struggled with that scripture about that he knows the plans for us. And I don't have that written down, I apologize, but you know, that plans to help us prosper, plans to help us grow. And I'm like, God, for so many years I was like, God, I don't think I believe that scripture, because I can't see the good in these situations. I can't wrap my mind around certain situations in my life and things that's happened, and I can't understand why this is happening. But, I can't wrap my mind around it. But God has helped me to see that I can wrap my faith around it. And now that scripture, I can truly say that, God, you do have a plan and a purpose for my life. I don't understand all the situations, but every one of these situations that I've had to walk through, some of them I can say online, some of them I can't. But the circumstances of my friend passing away from the car accident at the time of my wedding, and my miscarriages, and my mother-in-law's cancer, my father-in-law's cancer, my parents' accident, the things I've gone through, different other circumstances I've gone through in life. I can't wrap my mind around some of those things, but my faith is so strong. I can wrap my faith around those things, and my faith is strong. I can trust God. I can take him at his word. And I just want to be an encouragement to you all. And this is a very long post. And like I said, this was with no notes at all. Just got my notebook from my anxiety group. That's it, with the scribbled notes that I can barely read. And my Bible's open, but I hadn't even read a scripture from it. But I just want to encourage you all today, during the what ifs, during the whys, when these things happen, your faith in God can be strong. Because when you can't wrap your mind around your circumstance and your situation, and you're wondering how God's going to work it out or why it happened or whatever, it doesn't matter what the circumstance is. When you can't wrap your mind around it, you can wrap your faith and trust in God in it. Be strong today. Take God at His word. Trust His sovereignty in God, and rest in His presence, because He will bring you through.